Welcome, my friends, to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm DC Gomez, and I'm thrilled you're joining me today for a fun conversation with a passionate author. We're kicking off the program, like it's our tradition, with a short reading from the feature book. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get started.
Good morning. I'm Denise Frisino, and I am going to be reading from the first book in my trilogy, my Orchids trilogy. This book is called Orchids of War, and it is set in 1941 right now. The character Billy, she is going in for a competition, and this is the introduction of Jack. It's actually chapter 5, but we won't tell anybody. Jack Huntington crossed the hall to the test room with his assistant David following. They slipped silently into the shadows at the rear of the room and stood observing the backs and bent heads of the anxious competitors. Jack had arranged with the professor that the test be administered to these 12 hand-selected students. He had thought the competitors were 10 men and 2 women. The professor had proclaimed Billy as head of the class, but Jack had mistaken her name for that of a man's. A delightful surprise. From his first impression of her confident attitude, he breathed easier, pleased to have Billy among the others. Jack ticked off their names in his head as he sensed the students' nervousness like a hum reverberating and swirling through the air. He had insisted on the placement of the 12 long tables with each participant sitting facing front. The 2 other women, Phyllis and Ruth, sat strategically below the long hanging lights, easy to observe. However, Billy sat in the back, dimly lit. Stealthily, he started down a side aisle, keeping his bad eye, his right one, in as much shadow as possible. In their earlier conversations about the selection of the competitors, David had tended toward Ruth, who sat in the front row, her heavy chest barely concealed by the low cut of her blouse. Jack smirked. Ruth, with her revealing attire, was certainly more to David's personal liking. Phyllis, who occupied the seat in the third row, had a twitch, and upon closer examination, her caked-on makeup barely concealed the scars from her acne. The 9 men who rounded out the other contestants were of no interest to him. He headed to the back of the room where he remained in the dark, observing Billy. Her short-sleeved summer blouse exposed long arms, her hand steady as she quickly worked through the answers. She appeared lithe and athletic, which only added to her qualifications. She looked to be a bit taller than he would have liked, but her legs were long and muscular with good ankles, a plus. Jack circled one more time like a shark just off in the perimeter. He had to be certain. So much depended on his choice. When he stepped into the light, he stood above Billy's table. He reached for the purple silk object. Before he had it off the table, Billy's deep blue eyes snapped in his direction, unfaltering, daring. He did not flinch at the black patch shielding his right eye or the slight scar that christened his skin above and below the patch. He watched her intently, and she returned his stare. The hand she held out to retrieve her object had no ring that bound her to another. He let the fan fall, and she caught it before it hit the hard wood. He turned and headed for the door, with the irritating David at his heels. Elated, Jack pushed through the ornate door into the hallway. The girl with the sea blue eyes emerged his choice, pretty, smart, and fearless. He smiled. She seemed outstanding in all aspects. And by nightfall, he would know everything about Miss Billy O'Shaughnessy. The purple object had made the choice for him. Unfortunately, she would not win the competition and the professed trip to Japan. He would see to that.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Inside the Minds of Authors. Today, we have the amazing Miss Denise with us, and let's get started. Hi, Madame. How are you?
I am doing well, and thank you so much for having me.
It is such a delightful pleasure to have you. I am ecstatic. I don't want to waste any more time. Let's jump into this book. What is this book about? Give us a glimpse because I can't wait.
This book is 5 years of research about pre-World War II, and it's about the Japanese spies that were up and down our West Coast before the outbreak of World War II. Billy is based on a true person. There was a student at University of Washington. She was Caucasian, and she was fluent in Japanese. And when the FBI found out about her, Jack comes. And that's the beginnings of it. I've got 2 books in this trilogy done, and I'm working on the 3rd right now. A culmination of 9 years of interviewing men and women from World War II to get the facts straight around the storyline. Even though it's historical fiction, it is really deeply embedded in truth.
This is crossing different genres. So let's be honest about it. Historical fiction, yes, but where would you place it? Like, let's give it a little more because I'm sure people will be like, okay, I can see the historical. How much of the espionage is in this?
A lot, because it's based along about spies and how they performed and how the groupings formulated up and down the coast from Alaska, actually down to Mexico. In the second book, specifically, it gets into more of that detailing. And in this first book, it is really the introduction, and there's romance in it, of course. It's set in Seattle, San Francisco, and Hawaii, the first book, and then the second one goes into both theaters, the European and the Pacific during war, and follows the same characters, as will the third. So it's hard. It's a World War II. It's historical. It's romance. It's suspense. It is a thriller. A lot goes on.
It has a lot of moving pieces. It has a lot of things coming and going, like most action books that you can expect. What made you decide to pick this topic?
Had I known I was going to spend 9 years with the war, I would not have dipped my toe into this water at all. But when I was researching for my other book, my first book, Whiskey Cove, which is about Prohibition, and that's kind of a murder suspense novel as well, a gentleman told me about this woman who was at the UW, and I started looking around. When a book wants to be written, when miracles start to happen. I saw so many miracles along the lines of information was literally falling into my lap. I couldn't keep up with it. And then the characters, of course, took over and told me what to do. It's one of those, and it's just a book that is meant to be, because it kind of gives a balance as to why the decisions were made at that point in time in our history. I don't know what I would have done knowing what I know now on the other side of it. It was a tumultuous time. I just interviewed last week a 97-year-old. I find them in the Costco or in the ferry line or whatever, and they have their World War II hats on, and I chase them down and I say, may I please, please, please come and interview you? And I spend about 3 hours with each one of them, and I've done over 50 some odd.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. How open are they to be interviewed? Because you're looking at generations, they're not that open towards those memories. How did you get them to open up?
You do not allow one of their family members to be anywhere around because they will not talk. Generally, most of them cry. Seriously, I don't interrupt them. I just let them tell it the way they want to do it. And then I'll take notes and I'll go back and ask questions at the end if I think that they had something pertinent that I missed. It's learning to interview is a technique. You can't have their family around because they don't want to tell how they killed or when they killed or how many, or maybe they didn't. Maybe they were some of the lucky ones, but they saw things. This last gentleman, I walked in the door. He says, I don't want to talk about it. I said, okay, that's no problem. Don't worry about it. We're fine. We're fine. So we just sat and talked for a while. I just started rolling camera and we just started talking. Pretty soon I said, well, did you know that this had happened to this? Because I knew of the incident he was talking about, which was a horrific hurricane off of Japan in Okinawa, right towards the end of the war. And a lot of our ships sunk. 500 ships off this one portion of Okinawa were damaged and destroyed. So I knew a little bit about it, luckily. And so I was talking, he goes, really? I didn't know that. And he goes, well, this is what happened to me. And pretty soon he goes and he gets all of his paperwork that he had, that he wasn't going to show me, that he wanted me to take and throw away. I said, no, I'm going to take it and copy it, and I'm bringing it right back to you. But so we were 3 hours, and the hardest part is to know what they do, what they tell you that night they are going to have nightmares. And that's why he didn't want to talk about it. because he'd caught a cold. And so our interview was delayed. And so he started having the nightmares ahead of time. And some of the wives get mad at me like, I know what's coming. Because you have to remember, there was no PTSD back in World War II. So this grand, great, fantastic, fabulous, lovely, lovely generation did not have the outlet except amongst themselves. Here I am interrupting their peace. It's not always fun. But it's got to be done because what they're telling me is so vital for us to keep the information alive and the memories alive of what war is really like.
I love the fact that you're very conscious about the fact that this is going to be opening up these wounds. It is reliving these memories again. And the fact that they trust you enough with that says a lot about you. I truly admire that. That is one journey that is extremely hard to take for anybody, and especially when you're trying to gather information to create novels out of this. So it is very, very hard. And I'm also can understand the reservations on the families because half of them, or more like 90% of them, have never heard of it. So they're not understanding what is being relived. They're just seeing the aftermath. So it's a huge compromise.
Right. I'm still looking. I haven't given up because I know they're still out there. And I read the obits every Sunday and I go, oh, I missed that one. Oh gosh, I wish I could have gotten to him or her. I've interviewed women who were over. My godmother, she landed at Omaha 5 days after D-Day, and she was a lieutenant in nurse. She was a big woman. She always used to say, oh, he told me I was going to have a hospital. I never had one. I was in a tent for years. What I'm looking for too are the little stories that I can include, because that's what I do is I have my characters act out what happened to them, little things that I've learned along the way. The Battle of the Bulge, me landing at Iwo Jima, or what have you. I do a lot of reading on it. That's the fun aspect, and that's what I want to show is the real human side of this conflict.
You're dealing with really, really strong emotions. How much of a drama are you creating? Or is there some comedy? What can our readers expect?
Oh, no. I have a lot of comedy in there. I came from theater. I did comedy. You have to have a balance. Who wants to read a book that is, oh, he dies, she dies, he dies, she dies? No, you don't want that. As an author, you have a responsibility to have many levels. And that is one of the things that I always try to incorporate, especially the humor in these dark, dark times, because there was a lot of humor to be had back then, too. The Seabees were amazing back then. Just unbelievable what they could do and put together. There's a lot of humor in that. And the characters themselves, they have to have their transitions. So I touch on a lot of aspects of the war that people don't talk about. The spars. Are you aware of the spars? Who they were?
No, I'm not.
Wax, waves, spars. Spars were the women of the Coast Guard. Now, they only existed during World War II. Billy and her other spars, they get into trouble all the time. And Billy's always in trouble. And Billy's mother is a character and her brother. So you have to have the human side as well. You can't just have the killing side and the depressing side.
The novel has many, many layers, which is exciting for everybody.
Yeah.
Who is your target audience? Who are you aiming this book for?
It's been interesting. I've had teenagers tell me they love it. And those who were served, some of the ones that we've already lost from World War II, say things like, oh, honey, it took me right back. I love that book. I'm reading it again. These are people who were actually in the war who absolutely loved it. So it spans all kinds. For women, it's a very strong women. All of my books are very strong women. Women have to be strong. Come on. But my men are also very engaging as well. They go through a lot of changes as well. I was raised with 3 brothers, so you know.
I have 2 of my own. Trust me, I understand completely. When did you make the decision that this was going to be a trilogy? Did you knew this from the beginning, or did you start writing, but like, okay, I need more pages? Like, when did you decide that?
Oh, there you have it. Yes. The characters would not leave me alone. I got to page like 500 on the first book. I said, okay, it's going to be 2. Then I got to page 500 on the second book, and I was only into 1943. And I said, well, it's going to be 3. So I'm hoping that it ends at a trilogy, because now I have from 1943 to the end of the war to cram into this last book. And there's a lot that happens in those few years of the war. Those last years of the war, it was really ramped up and we really had a lot going on.
This is a very intense period. You have so much different political turmoils. You have
Mm.
all these things coming and going, and you're going cross countries. You're bringing all these pieces together. What was the part that you loved the most?
Having the miracles happen. I mean, really seriously having those miracles happen and knowing that I was on the right path. One miracle, I was in a Zumba class with a Japanese woman that it turns out I had done hula with when we were 5 years old together. Coincidence, coincidence. And her father, who was in the 442, went to Garfield High School with my mother. I go to Hawaii and I'm doing my research. I try and stand where I'm going to write about. I was at Kaneohe and I was on all the bases and things of that sort. I came back, and for December 7th, there is local Japanese newspaper that had gone into their archives and they had taken out an interview and they posted this interview of this man who had served in the Pacific, in Burma, in the jungles under Japanese snipers. We're asking him what was it like to come back then to Seattle and live amongst the Japanese right after the war. Well, that person they interviewed was my father. They had a 4-hour interview. My father was a journalist. They had a 4-hour interview of my father, Joe Frisino. My family didn't even know existed. I can go on.
Did you had a time where you felt discouraged, like
Oh,
maybe I shouldn't be writing this book?
I had to back off for a while. I really had to stop because what I have been told, I can't put in writing some of it. It is that harsh and that ugly. And to know those things, I don't know how I would make it happen to have it not seem like I'm making it up because nobody would believe me. What I've learned from some of these people. I interviewed a woman who was in a Japanese prison camp as she was captured in the Philippines at a very young age. And so she was there from ages 8 to 12, and a little white American girl with the beginnings of polio and what happened to her and her mother. Once we were through with the interview, she dug in and told me the reality of it. It's just disheartening that humans could treat each other in such a manner. It was like I felt like I was getting PTSD. I was like, whoa, these stories are so intense.
Are you working on other stuff to give you a break from this
Yeah.
really heavy world?
Yes. Yes. When I did take my break, I went back to my first novel that I'd written in 1993, but I didn't publish for years. And I put it in script form. I used to write plays and things. I thought I'm going to take a break, which is precisely what I did. Thank you for asking that question. And I did that. And that one's light. It's about a murder, but it's heavy, but there's a lot of light and humor in that one too. And so I got a break, but now I'm so ready to go to finish this up. I feel like it is my duty to all of the people I have interviewed to get this done.
When you decided to start writing, you said, I'm going to go take on this journey and do all this immense research. Do you have a writer that just kind of moved you to the point of like, I would like to do that?
I never thought I was the writer because my father was. I did theater. So that was not in my bailiwick. It was not even a channel I thought I was going to go down at all. But I got ill and I couldn't be on stage anymore. So I picked back up the book I had written and I just said, okay, I'm going to try this for a while. I had no idea. I had no inclination. I'm dyslexic. Everybody out there should never, ever, ever be afraid if you have something like dyslexia and you can't spell properly or you don't see it, it should not stop you ever. Don't let anything stop you. You just keep going.
Nowadays, we're very, very blessed that you have different things available. There's actually a font specifically for individuals with dyslexia. They have done research and a lot about it. Publishers who do children's books specifically are writing in this font to assist with that. So we can chit chat for a while. You have all this wisdom and all this knowledge. Where can our listeners find your books?
Thank you for asking that. I have a blog and a webpage. It's just my name, www.denisefrisino.com. And I have some of the interviews already up, some of the men and women from World War II, and I have some of the pertinent articles, incidences that happened, and I'm trying to get the blog out. There will be more. Ask your bookstore to order it, or you can get it online directly, and I send it to you on my webpage. Yeah.
I love it. To our listeners, come on, you need to pick up this amazing adventure. You also need to check out some of these interviews because it will
Yes.
truly change the way not only you see war, but the way you see people and how they have perseverance and how they have overcome some of these struggles. But thank you so much for this. This is definitely a work of passion, of love, because I'm going, ooh, that's intense.
Thank you. It has been, and I think that's one of the inspirations to get it done, is so that I can sit back and say, there you are. To all of you who gave me your time and your story, thank you.
I love it. Before you leave us, are you ready for our lightning round?
Oh, okay.
Easy peasy. Don't think too much about this. Caffeinated or decaf?
Oh, caffeinated.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Sweet or spicy?
Spicy, spicy.
If you could be a pirate or a knight, which one would you be?
Wow, that's a good one, because I think I'm a little bit of both. Um, um, oh, I'm going to say pirate. Today, I feel like I should be a little bit of a pirate.
I love it. Summer or winter?
Winter,
One food that will best describe your personality.
puntanesca, pasta
Really?
puntanesca,
Why?
spicy, hot. I don't know. Quick tempered, maybe. I don't know. I'm Irish and Italian, so it's either that or, corned beef.
I like the options. That's pretty good. I'll take. Madam, do you have any closing remarks for us?
No, just keep working at it. Don't give up, and don't let people get in your way. Jealousy is everywhere. Some people don't want others to succeed. Always find joy in what you do and encourage others, and you will get back from them what you have given to them.
A beautiful advice. Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. So, madam, it's been a pleasure to have you. Congratulations. Good luck. Get the
Thank you.
book done.
Yes, I will. And maybe we'll chat about it again later when I get it done.
I'm definitely interested to see how this journey comes all together. To our listeners, make sure you check out Miss Denise, her work, her passion, her books. And remember, we'll be back next week with another exciting author. So bye, everyone.